Hi, Itepokuin of the Place to Be Reviews. It's October, which is my favorite month of the year because Halloween, horror movies, and all of that great stuff. Now, I bet you're thinking, shouldn't you be reviewing Halloween? Well, guess what? Every week this month, I will be releasing 2 Friday the 13th movie reviews from parts 1 through 8, and then later this month, I will be doing Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, Freddy vs. Jason, and the reboot all in one video. I'll be releasing 2 of these every week this month. This week, you're going to get Friday the 13th and Friday the 13th Part 2 on Monday and Wednesday, in addition to the live show and a few other single-release videos. So, without further ado, I would say normally monkeys roll the footage, but let's see. Michael, roll the footage. Friday the 13th was a Paramount Pictures release, originally hit theaters May 9th, 1980. It was directed by Sean S. Cunningham, written by Victor Miller, makeup and effects by Tom Savini. Yes, that Tom Savini. It was shot on a $700,000 budget and showed a box office return of $59.8 million, which adjusted for inflation in 2020 equals $188,629,810.68. In 1980, it was one of 17 films distributed by Paramount Pictures. Only one, Airplane, returned more profits than Friday the 13th. This movie was set at the beginning of summer, but was shot from September through mid-October, which made the final scene with Jason and Alice in the lake so difficult as it took a complete day to shoot, and it was extremely cold as they were shooting in New Jersey. So we start at Camp Crystal Lake in 1958 with 2 counselors in particular, Claudette and Barry, as they sneak away for some premarital sex after a fireside sing-along of hymnals. And summarily both are killed. Claudette got an off-screen death, which it's reported this happened due to inclement weather conditions during shooting, which doesn't really make much sense because the scene was shot indoors. So yes, Claudette, I have a still of her death that I will provide here, but Barry was stabbed in the stomach, which we'll cover in the recap. As you see here, we have some footage, but yeah, this really kind of set the baseline for what happened and just kind of gives you a little bit of a backstory into what exactly is going on. Then we flash ahead to Friday, June 13th in the present day, which is presumably when the movie is set in 1980. A young girl named Annie is backpacking to the camp and finds a ride in a local diner. On her way to the truck, she's accosted by Crazy Ralph, who tells Annie she'll never come back because that place has a death curse, and the truck driver she hits to ride with, which tells her basically to quit because the camp is jinxed. He proceeds to tell her the backstory, the drowning of Jason in 1957 and the 2 counselors getting murdered in 1958, the water testing ban in 1962, and a bunch of unexplained fires. He drops Annie off at a cemetery because he only agreed to take her halfway there. Annie is picked up by yet another vehicle on her way to the camp after being dropped off, and we don't see exactly who's driving, but we know she doesn't feel right. She jumps out of the Jeep, gets injured in the process, chased into the woods by our unseen assailant, caught, and the killer slits her throat unceremoniously. Annie, who is supposed to be the chef at the camp, is dispatched. We're then introduced to the rest of our main cast, including Jack, played by Kevin Bacon, in his debut on screen, his girlfriend Marcy, and their third wheel, Ned. Now, we're all aware of Kevin Bacon's career after this movie, so there's no need to really discuss that. We also meet Bill. Yes, he's played by Bing Crosby's son, Harry, and Brenda, also Alice, who turns out to be our final girl, and camp owner, Steve Christie, who Alice has kind of a weird pre-existing relationship with, as they kind of touch on briefly in one scene, but never really expand on it further. The next person to perish in this movie is Ned Rubinstein, who is our comic relief. He happens to see what he thinks is just a person walking into a cabin and decides to investigate, much to the chagrin of our audience watching at home who knew what was going to happen. Ned perishes, which that death will come into play shortly thereafter. Next, Jack and Marcy go back to their cabin for some hanky-panky during the storm, but unfortunately for them, their climax will also be their denouement. and they don't realize that Ned is dead on the bed above them with his throat slit. Jack notices some blood dripping down, but gets an arrow shoved through his throat from underneath the bed in what is an amazing scene for the time. Marcy is in the latrine, hears a noise, and investigates only to take an axe to the forehead. Alice, Bill, and Brenda are getting high, drinking beer, smoking Marcy's weed while playing some strip Monopoly. Brenda leaves to go back to her cabin, and she thinks she hears somebody screaming help. So, of course, she runs out to the archery range barefoot, investigating this, and she ends up wandering around in the rain. Lights turn on the archery range. Brenda is killed off camera. Next in our list of deaths is Steve Christie, who had caught a ride back to the camp with a police officer who suddenly has to drop him off as he gets called on the radio. Steve walks back, happens across someone right by the camp sign, and he summarily takes a machete to the chest and the stomach, leaving him dead. Alice wakes up in an empty cabin and goes to the kitchen to make coffee because when everything's wrong and your friends are dead, nothing makes it right like Folgers instant coffee.
The best part of waking up is Folgers in your cup.
Following her cup of joe, Alice goes out loudly looking for Bill, only to find his poncho, but finds Bill pinned to the door by 4 or 5 arrows. Given our killer's identity in the end is a rather implausible death scenario, but who is keeping track of plausibility in these movies? The scene with Alice blocking the door with various items is hilarious, given how easy it is to break in the windows. In comes Marcy's lifeless corpse through the window. Alice's reaction is priceless. She reaches outside when she sees Steve's Jeep arrive, and little do we know, this is the scene where we first
I'm Mrs. Voorhees, an old friend of the Christies.
to meet Mrs. Voorhees as Alice tells her everybody's dead, and they go investigate together. Unbeknownst to Alice that Mrs. Voorhees is actually the killer. So from here on out, it is our final girl, Adrienne King, Alice Hardy, versus Pamela Voorhees, Betsy Palmer, and of course, Alice comes out with the W. She survives by decapitating Betsy Palmer after a great final sequence and fight on the beach, running at her with the machete, chops her head off. That scene, of course, led to this beautiful, serene setting on the lake. You can see the leaves changing because, as I said in the beginning, this was shot in September to October, not the beginning of summer. And it leads to the greatest jump scare probably in this movie. Right here, ladies and gents. Yes, that's right. You think she's safe, but Jason jumps up out of the water. And this was a great jump scare heading into the go home segment of the movie, of course. So Alice wakes up in a hospital room in one of the greatest fake outs in horror history. She's alive. She's in a hospital room. She asks about the boy. The police said they didn't find any boy, but everybody's dead. Her parents are on her way to pick her up. Let me give you my final thoughts on this movie now. So this one was a little less intelligent version of its predecessor, Halloween, but the victims still follow all the typical horror tropes. Bad decisions, lack of awareness. The whole precipice of the original film was they literally ripped off Halloween. This is per Sean Cunningham and Victor Miller. The setup was based on a prior evil and putting the teens in a position where the adults could not help. I myself really like this movie. I really like this movie. It is fun. Especially when you see it for the first time, it gives you that. You think, well, it's Friday the 13th. You think it's going to be this masked killer, and then boom, it's Mrs. Voorhees, his mom, and then it goes into the typical Jason tropes for the rest of the series. I enjoyed it. I give this a solid 7 out of 10. That's it for me, guys. Be sure to do all the YouTube things, like, share, bitch slap that like button, share the video. Please, if you have not yet, let today be the day you subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to Tree Fitty. Let's take this thing. Oh yeah, remember, if I don't see you, have a great day. A pleasant tomorrow. Remember, Wednesday, I'll be reviewing Friday the 13th, Part 2.